This is it. Car Biz Chronicles Season 3, The Wonderful Women of the Car Biz finale episode. Liza Borches. Liza, unbelievable human being, unbelievable story. Her passion for this industry, and I've talked to a lot of passionate people over the years. I mean, she rivals me. I mean, she bleeds it. She loves it. The way she talks about her family, fourth generation of doing business, a legacy dealer who continues to grow, who's grown through the tough times, who realizes that training her people and her customers are the most important thing to her. And that means a lot. And buying a car is a special experience. And we talked a ton about that today. You guys, I went through 3 pages of notes today. It doesn't stop. She is so full of ideas. And if you don't listen to the last 5 minutes, you have missed out on everything. She tells you the main reasons why you should have joy going into 21 in this great business. So thank you all for joining us. Sit back and enjoy the finale episode of the CBC3. Thanks a lot. All right, welcome into the final episode, Car Biz Chronicles Season 3, The Wonderful Women of the Car Biz. That's right. We saved the best for last, and I say that because I've watched this group from afar for a while. I really appreciate everything that they do in our industry, and it just so happens they are run by a wonderful woman herself. Liza Borches. Liza, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Sean. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. As I said, I've watched your group from afar. I love all the things that you dedicate yourself to in training and social media and being a part of your community. But I realized that the journey to where you are was probably a long one. Why don't you give us a little background about how you got into this wonderful business and sort of where you've seen it from where you were then to now?
Sure. I will. I'll give you a little short version. You can ask me to expand on any area that you might think people are interested in hearing. But I have been in the business my whole life because I am the 4th generation of our family to have the honor and the privilege of being able to run Carter Myers Automotive. So technically I've been in my whole life. I actually got my first real job in the car business outside of my family right after I graduated from University of Virginia. So finished college and I went to work for American Honda Motor Company. I really at that point had no desire to come on the retail side of the business, and we can get into that later. But I'd always been around the business, the industry. I was at NADA one year and met the vice president of sales for Honda, and he encouraged me to apply to their national trainee program when I graduated from college. So I did that. I moved out to Southern California, ended up working for Honda for about 6.5 years. Phenomenal company. In fact, one of my aspirations when I was 21 and joined them was I wanted to be the first female president of American Honda Motor Company. Found out that might have been a little bit tough. But after about 6.5 years, I left American Honda for several reasons, including the fact that in order to continue to grow at American Honda, I needed to really be able to move around the country every 2 years. That was the path for you to continue to move into senior management with a manufacturer. My husband and I were about to get married and knew that we wanted to have children. And he was actually the one that said, Charlottesville is such a wonderful place to raise a family. Why would we not consider talking to your dad and potentially coming back in the family or going into the family business? And so when he was open to the idea, there were several things that were really important to us. One, we wanted to be in a community where we could put roots down and become a part of the community. And we had been moving around every 2 years with Honda. And right at that 2-year mark, you were starting to get to know people and get involved, and then boom, you're out. So being in a place long-term that we were going to be able to grow was important. And the other thing that was really important for me work-wise was I didn't want to come into the company and just be the daughter of the owner. And so there was a small Volvo dealership for sale in Charlottesville. The gentleman was looking to retire. So I came back and talked to my dad, and our holding company invested in the dealership, and I invested in it personally. And so for the first 7 years when I was with Carter Myers Automotive, I just ran our Volvo store and really kept it very separate from the rest of the company, allowed me to learn in a small environment how to be a general manager, a sales associate, a service manager. I drove the shuttle, put parts on the shelves, kind of learned a little bit of everything, and had both of my kids when I was running that store. So that's how I got into business. Always been a part of my life, but I didn't take, I think, the normal route. I did go work for a manufacturer and then bought into my own store and just kind of learned boots on the ground, every position in the dealership.
That story is even cooler than I could have imagined it. And the main reason for me is because I think that what makes the car business such a special industry is it's one of the last legacy industries that exists. And your family is a prime example of that. And I started with a group in Colorado, and they were just getting started as a father-son. So there was a built-in sort of legacy. And now I'm working side by side with my buddy who's now running it, and he's looking at what his kids will do with it. And I find that to be such a cool opportunity. And the way that you approached it, as you probably already know, is unique to most dealers' children. You decided to take a different path. I mean, recently I would say though, and maybe you can speak to this if you have older children, but recently I feel like most of the younger generation now kind of is hands off to the business. I don't know. I don't see kids who are 21 today being interested in their family's car dealerships for the most part. And I don't know if that's concerning or not. Do you see that in your world? Do your kids or your younger generations have aspirations to join you on that side?
So my oldest child is 15, so we're not quite to that stage of conversation yet. But as I watch it with kids of my 20 group members and other dealers across the country, I think there's so much more job opportunity out there. And it's so much more normal for kids to leave their hometown, leave their home state, go and explore, that I do think that there are probably fewer kids just automatically going into our industry. But I think what's the cool thing about it is that the next generation that does choose to go into our industry, they go into it with eyes wide open. They do it very intentionally because they love the business. Whereas I think even my generation and maybe the one above me, it was almost more like, well, you had this family business and there might have been an obligation on some people's parts to feel they had to go into it. And then you didn't perform to your highest potential. So the generation now, when they go in, they're going in because they love it and they want to do it. And I think they're going to excel when they make that decision.
So it's a really great point too. I look at that the same way, kind of jokingly, but like with the royal family, right? You look at it where you're like, look, you have to be a part of this. Now the younger generation's like, look, we want to be a part of it. We have control. We can do things differently. It expands on things. And I think you're really right about that. You said something too. You drove shuttle. People always joke at me. I had so much fun driving shuttle. I used to get into the dealership. My wife and I moved to Colorado on a whim. And when I took this job, I said, look, I got to get to know the area. How can I do that quickly and get to know people? I drive shuttle. And if I wear the normal gear, no one will notice me. Why did you drive shuttle?
Well, for two reasons. One, my first year at the dealership, my goal was, because we were pretty small, was to get to know every single customer. And I called every single service customer the day after their service visit. And there was no better way than to jump in the shuttle and talk to people while you drove them around town. But the other reason was I couldn't stand to see somebody standing there waiting for the shuttle. So, the shuttle would be out dropping people off and we'd have two more people there waiting. And if I saw someone waiting, I would just grab a loaner car, put them in the car and we would go. So I just found it was really beneficial. And we were so small, as I said, that it was the best way for me to get to know our customers, and it paid dividends.
Okay, so that's what I was going to follow up on. So what did you notice from getting involved to now that's what I would consider to be grassroots, right? So my company deals in data and analytics and marketing, blah, 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 all the boring stuff. Who cares? But what I find most importantly is what you guys do at a grassroots level. Has that always been how your family has done business, as to do it from the ground up and then let advertising maybe do what it does, but not nearly as important as other people make it out to be? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I would say I didn't know my great-grandfather, but I knew my grandfather. And we always knew back in Petersburg, Virginia, where we started, that when they talked about the businesses that were important parts of the community, they would talk about the hospital and they would talk about one of the local colleges. And there were, two other businesses, and there was Petersburg Ford. And there was no other dealership that was mentioned outside of my grandfather's dealership as far as being a really important part of the community. And so I do think that he set that bar, and it was just ingrained in me. That's the way that we do business. When I came back here in 2003, one of the first couple of weeks we were open at Volvo, United Way called me, and the executive director wanted to meet with me and asked if I would be on the board. And I remember calling my dad and said, Dad, United Way has called me. What do you think? Have you been involved with this organization? And he said to me, Liza, you just bought this brand new dealership. You just got married. You've got a lot on your plate. You're going to have plenty of time down the road to be able to get involved in the community. And of course, I didn't listen to him, and I'm glad I didn't. He jokes about it now in every new hire orientation that I didn't listen to him. And it was a fantastic way for me to get to know some of the leaders in the community, to understand all the different gaps and needs in our community from all nonprofits. And to be honest, I sold half of them Volvos. And so it was really a win-win. And we put our dealership on the map while also making a difference. And I think that's what it's all about. It works, it goes both ways.
Yeah, we have our large dealer partner. Actually, the people whose idea it was for us to start our company is Zimbrick Automotive here in Madison, Wisconsin, run by Tom Zimbrick. You guys speak the exact same language.
And we've had several conversations. I know Tom.
Oh, well, that's awesome, because you guys that's why I love working with him. That's why I love being a part of, because his community. And so if it's important to him, to us, it's important, right? So he comes to all of his vendors and he asks all of us to participate in the United Way. And hands down, right? No questions asked. Right. Of course, we're going to do that. But it makes a difference to you guys as owners, what the community, how they view you. And I don't feel like everyone feels that way about the industry. And I think that's why you guys do so well. So bravo to you to being so involved in your community. Because, I mean, I know I shouldn't say it cost you nothing, because you're a busy woman and time is everything. I get that. But it costs you your time. And if you can make the time, it seems like it pays you back. And that's really great to hear. That's awesome. So, Liza, when you look at today's, you mentioned it here, the new hire orientations. One of the things that drew me into your company is you talk about when you do them, on snippets on social media. Has that been a thing the whole time? Because once again, Zimbrick Automotive training is a thing that everyone goes out of their way to do it. And what has it shown you over the years? How has it evolved, I guess, the training orientation?
So back when I first joined our company in 2003, we really operated as individual dealerships. My dad had 3 that he ran. I bought the Volvo store, and then pretty soon after that, he bought another Hyundai store. But we really operated as single silos. And he would come around once a month and do our financial review and go over the financial statement with us. But other than that, as a general manager, we ran our store. We didn't even talk as general managers. And any training, any orientations we did were very singular to our dealership. In 2008, when the recession hit, a couple of things happened. One, we stopped doing a lot of training in general at that point. My dad and I started working more closely together, obviously to try to get the company through a very difficult time. We had a very strong balance sheet, and we started looking for opportunities to grow. And that was the first buy sell that I was really involved with outside of my Volvo store, was our stores in Stanton, Virginia, Valley Honda and Valley Volkswagen. And so during this whole time, we decided we're adding new stores. My dad and I were putting together a plan for the future outside of just doing our day-to-day, which we'd done for a long time. And I overheard one of our managers doing an interview in Richmond. And I heard him say, well, we have a Chevy store down the street, and I think we have a Nissan dealership in Charlottesville. And he didn't know anything about our company. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait, whoa, I've been kind of over here in my own little, bucket at Volvo. And it was in 2010, after we felt like we had made it through 2008, we were adding a couple of new stores. Dad and I were transitioning the leadership of the company. That's when we really made a commitment to several things. First, making sure that every new hire that joined CMA recognized the breadth and the depth of the organization that they were now a part of. It wasn't just one dealership. We wanted to make sure that they saw career opportunities that were outside of one dealership. We also recognized that we had our ESOP, our employee stock ownership plan, at that point since 1979, yet nobody really knew about it or really even understood what it meant. They didn't even know really, except after they'd been here for a long time, but our newer hires didn't understand that they were going to be an owner of the company. And then the third piece was, we recognized that if we truly wanted to grow for the future, that we had to start growing a bench behind all of our current managers. I learned from our history back in the 90s when our company almost went bankrupt, and my dad would come home every day and he'd say 6 cars a day keeps the banker away. And he told me in 2010, he said, Liza, the reason that happened was I expanded too fast without having the proper people in place and without training their bench. And I heard that loud and clear. So 2010 is really when we changed our perspective on training and investing in our people and really becoming one CMA team instead of individual silos.
So that's 7 years, right? That's 7 years from you coming on board and running your own store to seeing this sort of evolution of what needed to be done at your family's business. I think that says a lot to people who think they can change these cultures overnight at dealerships. I think that's a fancy buzzword right now. I think people get excited. Oh, culture change, culture change. You're talking about 7 years of a fourth generation business. That's a lot of time to invest to get it right. So I hope people heard that message, that this isn't an overnight, you didn't just wake up. However, I think, is it fair to say, because I think a lot of people, I know myself, I've had these conversations recently about the silver lining of 2020. Is that a sort of silver lining that happened because of '08 for your family and for your business? Was because it did draw you closer together, and it did say to you, hey, we need to actually get tighter and do things differently? Is that fair to say about that?
Yeah, I think it did. There were two silver linings of 2008. One, we saw as an opportunity to grow, because a lot of dealers didn't want to work as hard as they had to work through 2008. And they said it's time to hang up their hat. And second, we also saw dealerships going out of business because they either lost their credit line or they got their franchise taken away. And we knew that we started thinking right then that we're not going to be able to be relevant if we stay as a 3 or 4 car dealership group, that we needed to start growing, and we needed to be a regional player in order to be relevant to our manufacturers, to our bankers, to our vendors. And so that's when we started creating our growth plan.
It's a very fair statement. I remember having a conversation with Tom Zimbrick before we started this whole thing when I was working with him on another project. And I said, look, I want to have my dream. I want to get my own store. And he looked at me. He's like, one store ain't going to cut it, man. He's like, I'm sorry. I don't want to burst your bubble, but it's not worth it. Why would you bother? And then he came up and he said, why don't you do this? And then we started involved into our company. So I'm happy I did it. But you're right. It is about size and scale. But Liza, when that happens, like Dad said, people aren't ready for that, right? They think it's about, how much cash you have available. Can you get the financing? Can you do all these things? But that's kind of the easy part. I honestly, raising money in today's world is easy as far as I'm concerned. What's hard is selling cars and doing it right. What did you and Dad do? Did Dad, you guys were changing it as you evolved. So did that sit in the back of your head in this evolution, what Dad had experienced back then in the when he almost lost everything?
Absolutely. We use the word human capital. Human capital is as important as the financial capital. And in 2010, when we added the Stanton stores, one of the models that we've always had is to have general managers who have equity investments in their dealerships, who are minority partners. And our goal is to always find a general manager who, whether it be an internal person or an external person, who believes in the same mission, vision, values of our company that we think is going to be a great culture fit, and also to have them have skin in the game, because we believe that is going to, one, create more long-term commitment and loyalty, stability for the store. And like you said, the dream of having your own dealership just isn't viable to have one store anymore. And there are a lot of people out there in this industry who have that dream of owning a car dealership. So the best way to allow people to do that now is to allow them to buy in as a minority partner, as part of a larger dealer group. And I think that allows all of us to have equity, to be owners, to be having equity for our family's future, but also to take advantage of size and volume, expense control, and reputation.
The model is unbelievable. I think for anyone who is aspiring to be an owner, if you just listen to the last 5 minutes, you want to seek out groups such as this one. You want to be a part of people who want you to buy into their group and have skin in the game. Well, look, I made this joke for a long time, but car salesmen have everything that small business owners have without any of the headache, without any of the heartache, without any of the issue. They don't pay for overhead. They don't pay for tech. They don't pay for ads. They don't pay for desks. So if you can get a chance to be an owner and someone who has that, Liza, has that always been that way? Has that how CMA has operated with their general managers, or is that just a 2010 thing and forward?
Oh, no. We had partners prior to 2010. And I would say that that's been consistent really since the late 80s, where we've had minority partners.
Okay. And when you have, how much of, now that you've been doing your training since 2010, how much of what you do is supporting that bench? Have you realized the bench prophecy that you hoped it would be? Has that happened for you?
It definitely has. There's a lot of different areas of training that we invest in. And we always say some training is the hardware and some is the software. There's some training where we're trying to teach skills, but then there's a lot of training that is about leadership, and it's about motivating, inspiring growing teams and how to become a leader. And that's the harder stuff to coach and teach. And there's not, we send people to the NADA Dealer Academy to get the hardware training, the skills training. And then we knew that we needed to do the software training more in-house. And so when we look at our leadership team, I would say it's a really nice combination of some team members who have started as a sales associate and moved all the way up, and some that we've brought in at a general manager or general sales manager level. I think there's an important combination of the two, because if you only grow people from within, sometimes you lack outside ideas and different sets of eyes and ears and lenses that you can pick up from being a part of another great industry or different dealer group. So we try to combine that. We have about half that grew from within CMA and half that came in from outside. And that has really, I think, given us a diverse, a strength of diversity of ideas, I guess is the best way to say it.
So you touched on the leadership. So you have the new hire orientation. Are there other parts of your training arm that go on as a continual basis? Are there follow-ups to salespeople training? I assume it's not just the new hire orientation. So are there other parts of the arm?
Yeah, I'll tell you, our managers sometimes will say, Liza, we cannot do any more training. Please don't make me send any more people to training. I don't have enough coverage. And I'll tell you, I listen to our leadership team on almost everything with the exception of that. So you know what? Our number one core value is putting people first. Number two is creating win-win partnerships. And number three is always progressing forward. And all three of those core values mean you have to keep pouring into your people. And so I keep telling them, like, you're just gonna have to figure it out. Find coverage. People are gonna have to not take a day off, whatever, if they got to cover for someone who's at training. So yes, we have the new hire orientation. We have a consistent training partner in our for all of our sales associates and sales managers that they work with all year long, every week. We have a training partner for our BDC development. We have a training partner for our service managers and service advisors. We have leadership training partners where our entire leadership team is on a 1-hour development training every Wednesday morning from 9 to 10. And it's different topics throughout the whole year, but it's parts managers, service managers, controllers, sales managers, general sales managers, and general managers.
Now, you use the word partner, and it sounds like that's external, right? So you're not using the word vendor. That seems intentional, which I really appreciate, because again, Tom Zimbrick refers to us as partners to his dealership, and he has since day one, and that means the world to us. How do you make that difference in that statement? What is that to you?
When I mentioned our core value of creating win-win partnerships, I believe that our vendors need to be selected very carefully and thoughtfully. When we select a vendor partner, it's someone that we are looking to have a long-term relationship with. We do not like to switch partnerships often. And sometimes that means we take our time to find the right one. One of the things that I think shows our commitment, it's such a little thing, but and I took off my name tag for this interview because I figured you knew who I was, but we all have name tags that have our name and says Owners Just Do More on it. And they're in navy blue and white. And then our vendor partners, so that people around our dealerships know that they are a trusted partner of ours when they're in our stores, they all have red name tags that say Owners Just Do More and their name, so that when they're visiting our stores, everyone knows that they're a partner that we believe in and trust and have invested in. And it's not just a vendor that we work with.
That's so cool. That's so cool. How long have you been doing the red name tag thing? Has that been a while?
Only a couple of years.
Okay.
Only a couple of years.
That's really cool. Because again, it's something that when you're going through stores as a vendor, people look at you. I mean, I worked for the OEM on a consulting contract. I've been in the stores. And if people don't know who you are, they don't know if they can trust you. Should they look at you? Does the owner buy into it? So that's very interesting. But I will say this, you work with multiple training partners, right? Multiple different people who help in that space. How is it conveyed from where you sit down to the people who GMs, whoever has to sort of, make everyone accountable? Training is important to you. It's from the top down, right, Liza? I mean, you make that clear to everyone by the statement you made earlier, which is, hey, figure it out. I don't ask you to do much, but training is important to me. Right. Is that a buy-in everyone's aware of? I mean, from the top down to the bottom?
They're all aware of it. It doesn't mean they don't push back occasionally.
Sure.
I know how busy everybody in the organization is. And as you know, training is probably one of the first things that gets ignored when you get busy. Mm-hmm. So if it's not a non-negotiable and it's something that you can do when you have time, it's the first thing to go off your calendar. So we set it up at training. We expect them to be there. When somebody's not bought in, we're going to sit down and have a conversation, and we do have to have those. But it's important to me. They are very clear on how important it is for our company. I do ask for their input though. When we bring in a partner, such as who we use for sales training, and I'll tell you, we didn't have an outside partner for sales training for a lot of years. I didn't feel like there was a partner that was a good fit for us from a culture standpoint. And so we were doing it internally. And before we selected the one that we're with right now, we brought him to our general manager strategic summit, had him do a presentation, had everybody go and kind of vet him. This is not something I do in a vacuum. I certainly value their input, all of our general managers and leaders and from all different titles. And so, but once we decide on a partner and we invest in it, then I expect everybody to be a part of it and be on board.
Okay. And that's fair because, again, if the agreement is there that everyone likes what this is about, then the agreement is there that we're all going to do the work post that. Because I think you're right. Training, not only when you get busy, but when expenses become the concern, whether that's because of a year like this, because of a year like 08, I lived through 9/11. You've been in the business that long as well. You've seen all these kind of, big peaks and valleys. Is training for you almost doesn't, you cut everything else before that? Like how do you go about kind of reconciling that? Like I hear it a lot this year, Liza. I got rid of my trainer because, 2020. How did that operate for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, that went through all of our minds. On March 15th, when the world changed this year, we certainly immediately started thinking about what expenses that we needed to change or eliminate. And the team that we work with on leadership training, I called them and I think they were very nervous when they got my call. I think they assumed that they were going to hear, we got to cancel. This is not an expense we can have right now. And I called them and I said, I'm not sure what our sales numbers are going to look like this year. I'm not sure what they're going to look like next week. But I know right now there's probably never been a more important time than right now that we need to have our leaders on this call every Wednesday at 9. And we got to talk through what we're dealing with. We've got to talk through how to keep our sales team focused on the job that needs to get done and the customers we have to take care of, how we're going to do it safely. Our leaders need to be stronger leaders this year than they've ever been. And so we definitely we didn't cut any training this year. And that was a scary decision for me. I was we do spend a lot of money in training. Yeah. And it was a scary decision. I did ask a couple of them if we could go to a monthly payment versus an annual or quarterly. But the commitment to actually doing the training, we didn't waver.
Your points are so right and so valid. I mean, never was there more time to kick off this season before the season actually began. I had my own personal therapist on my show. And it was the idea was, look, never have I ever been so happy that I've already had someone in my corner, didn't have to scramble to go find them. And I view training such as that for dealerships. You need an outside voice. You need someone who's seeing a different perspective. Your vetting process seems very in-depth. How did you come up with the strategic summit idea? I've heard of these before. Where did that kind of come from?
Well, we knew that we needed to get our leadership team out of the dealership at least once a year to be able to plan and focus on what we were going to want to accomplish the following year. And everybody uses that word retreat, like we're going to go do a retreat. Yeah. And we joked, we're like, retreats actually give you the idea that maybe there's like downtime or fun time, and strategic summit to me means you're going to work.
It does sound, yeah. I would rather go to a retreat, Liza. I'm not going to lie to you.
I know. And Sean, I have to tell you, I have gotten feedback over the years that we needed to incorporate a little bit more fun in our strategic summit. So we have done that. My vice president of operations, Matt Walsh, has been great at pushing me on that. He's like, because my personality would be like, we'd show up, we'd work from 4 p.m. until 8 p.m., go to dinner the first night. We started at 7:30 in the morning. I'd take us till 5:30. We'd let them 30 minutes before we have cocktails and drinks, and we'd start at 7:30 the next morning. They were like, oh my gosh, by the second day, like I'm still up there talking, I'm pumped up, and they're like staring at me like I'm a crazy person.
That's your OEM blood right there. That's what happens there. That's from working for those guys for too long. You just meeting.
Well, and I just felt like I had so much I wanted their input on and so much I wanted to get done in 2.5 days that there was never enough time. But I've come to recognize over the last couple of years that when we stop and we do something in the afternoon that maybe isn't in a meeting place, there are still great conversations happening and there are relationships being built. And there is so much positive from that. So they have softened me on that a little bit. And now we still get away for 2.5 days, but we do incorporate at least one kind of afternoon or evening, something that's not work related.
Yeah, don't get out of hand here. It's just a couple of
Right.
hours, but we will do something other than work. That's cool though, because you realize it, right? And you're nimble with that change. I heard a lot of people sort of, again, talking about the year that we're in and what we're up against as far as hiring being difficult, right? Finding people. So I'm going to take you a step before your new hire orientation. How do you go about filling that room? How do you go about finding people right now? I think it's a huge struggle. Of course, I don't want you to give away anything secret. I know that you run a great organization, but what can you share with me about your process to get to the orientation?
I will tell you that while there have been some conversations this year about how to find people, and I would say technicians are still probably the toughest for us right now, we've been very successful in recruiting this year. When I hold the new hire orientation, one of the things that I ask in every orientation, I said, please raise your hand if you knew somebody else in our organization prior to joining CMA. And since we started redoing our new hires in June, I guess it was, about 70%, 1 month it was up to 80% of that room had known someone in our organization before they joined us. So we have really been relying on referrals and recommendations of our current team. We've been really encouraging our current team to share the CMA story out on social media, share it to their friends and family, because I know that if Bob recommends somebody to come join our sales team, he is not going to recommend someone to work next to him who has a terrible work ethic, a negative attitude, or is going to be a cancer, right? Like nobody wants to sit next to someone like that.
Right.
So if they help us find the best candidates, they're only going to bring us people that they want to work with who are going to help our overall team be more successful. And being that we're employee owned and we're an ESOP, the higher performance their neighbor or their coworker is adding to the team, the better our overall stock price is going to do, and the more it's going to come back to everybody to benefit. So that's been a work in process for several years. We've been really trying to push incentives, financial incentives to our current associates to help us find new people. We'd rather pay them than to pay a job board or LinkedIn or Indeed. I'd rather pay my current associates to find me great people. So we are at a very high percentage of people joining us are referrals and recommendations. The other thing that we've really capitalized on this year is social media. People are at home all the time. They're on screens all the time. If you look at the number of hours people spend on social media, it has significantly increased this year. And so we have really focused on sharing more of the CMA story through social media, letting people know who we are. And that has absolutely helped us in recruiting probably more than any other area.
Once again, you apply the principles that the best salesmen apply, right? Who's the best customer to get a customer from? The customer I just sold a car to that loves me. Who would I rather pay? That customer is who I would rather pay for the next referral, right? And so on and so forth. That's how I built my business as a salesperson. After 2 years, my dealership hated me on Saturdays. People would just come in with my business card. People would be working for me all day, but that's because I just continually incentivize. Now I live in a state, Liza, that you actually legally can't do that.
Same in Virginia.
It is same. Oh my God. It's so silly. But when I bring it up to Tom, he's like, Sean, that's connected to Sundays being closed. So we just don't fight it. We leave the bird dog because they attach it to us opening or closing on Sundays. So we just leave the argument alone.
We can send very nice thank yous to a customer for referring to us, but we can't pay them. We can't have any sort of program, but we can thank them.
Let's thank them. All right. Well, I thank all of them very much. Always, right? Always and everywhere. Social media, I've seen you pick that up quite a bit. Do you have responsibilities at a store level, or is that more people who kind of sit up at your level as far as like in a corporate setting for your group? How do you handle social media, if you don't mind?
Our social media is all organic. We do have some training that we share both with our sales associates, our leaders, all the managers in our company about maybe the best way to utilize social media. We do talk about it in the new hire orientation on maybe topics to stay away from on social media. We've got plenty of information shared about best practices. But most of our social media is not on our company pages. We do a little bit on our company pages, birthdays, anniversaries, and customers, but the majority of our social media is very organic. It's our own associates posting and sharing and getting the message out there. my personal Facebook page, the general managers, the other managers. So it's much less structured from a corporate standpoint and more just, here's our best practices. We strongly encourage you to be a part of it. And it's very organic.
So you build it into the DNA. I mean, that's kind of the point there, right? Is that you just say, hey, look, you want to have your own page, which I think, Liza, a lot of people struggle with that, right? I think a lot of people struggle with their own page versus a business linked page with their name on it because people, I mean, look at the last, year. I mean, people tend to do and say crazy things. How do you mitigate that at your level when you allow for that risk?
It is hard. I've had a lot of dealers ask that question and we've had some good brainstorms about it. In today's world, whether you have a business page and a personal page or just your personal page, there's no black and white between personal and professional anymore. It's all gray. It's all one. And so we, from the day that an associate joins us, we strongly encourage them to recognize that anything that they post online represents them as a person, represents the company that they're associated with, represents their family, their church, if that's something important to them, and just to be very thoughtful about it. We try to give as much guidance. We can't make them post anything, which I think one of the best things about what we've done is it is very authentic. It's very sincere. It's not us saying, here, post this or put this on the company page. Everybody has their own personality showing through their own social media page. And hopefully when we've set the right culture and workplace environment, they want to share it. So it's not us forcing them. It's not us having a social media plan that everybody puts this particular message out on the same day. It's us inspiring them to want to share on social media because they're proud of where they work and proud of the organization they're a part of. Now, the hardest thing was around politics, and we can't mandate what they can and can't post. I did have several conversations with my general managers about, as leaders, we need to set the example and be thoughtful about not being polarizing while also being true to ourselves. And there's a fine line there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I speak for a lot of people when I'm just glad that at least it's be 4 more years before I have to deal with any of it again, at least at that level. And for me, I'm happy because I don't like dealing with any of it. So, but it's got to be hard because you sit in that chair and you allow people to have that freedom, which is incredible of you. But that comes with some weight and some people might not understand that. So that's truly organic social media, though. For anyone watching, you guys talk about organic social media posts. No. This is organic social media. The idea that people within your organization care enough about where they work to use their page to tell everyone about it or share a picture of a car they sold to a customer or to a friend or to a family member. That's amazing. So that's so great. Liza, we brought this whole season up about the wonderful women of the car business. Can you speak to me? Some of the women that have been on have spoken a little bit about some of the early struggles they may have had getting into that spot or into the industry as females. Was it any more difficult for you, not only being a female, but also being the owner's daughter? Well, I mean, can you speak to where the struggles are a little bit? Because I think a lot of people are afraid of our business because they think the struggle is endless. And I don't think that's the case. I think it begins and ends and then allows for an opportunity of growth. How do you see that?
Yeah. It's definitely different being a female in a leadership role in the auto industry. And I think for any minority, it's tough. But I always tried to use it to my advantage. I can remember when I was in my late 20s as a general manager of the Volvo store, and then as the career has gone on, there are more times than not that I'm the only female in the room, whether it be a dealer advisory board meeting, motor vehicle dealer board meeting, a manufacturer training per se. More often than not, I'm the only female in the room. Now that's starting to change. But back in 2004, when I was first in those roles, it was almost always. Mm-hmm. But what I learned quickly was you can't force your way into the good old boy network. It's hard to break into those relationships. I remember showing up to my first 20 group meeting and I was completely intimidated by all the men in the room who had known each other forever. And I certainly didn't fit in. But as soon as I think they recognized that I did know a little bit about what I was talking about, and I didn't try to be overbearing and push my way in, they started accepting me, and I was happy to be a part of those conversations. The other thing is that I tried to, as I said, use it to my advantage. If I was the only female in the room, I made sure that I spoke up. If every man was in the room in a dark suit, I wore a pink dress. I think that there's an advantage to standing out in a room. And now you have to know what you're talking about, and you got to be prepared. And so there is some pressure with that. There are times where I think I was invited to be on dealer advisory boards with our manufacturers because they just wanted to have a female dealer voice.
And that's what I wanted to ask you was, did you see the diversity sort of, forced diversity along the way? And do you, to me, it feels double. Look, I'm a middle-aged white guy. So diversity is not, I don't deal with it, but females, my wife, I see it all the time. How do you take the role because it makes sense? Or do you go, no, you're only giving it to me because of this? Like, how does that balance?
No, you take it and you make the most of it, because saying no just to spite yourself, say, oh, they only want me because I'm a woman, whatever. Say yes, and then you go there and you make a difference, and you make them realize that they need more women on that board. Because if our customer base is 50% women, we should have 50% women at the table. So
the statistic has come out on my shows, and it's right. I mean, and it's probably higher than that. If we really look at the buying decision driver, it's probably 50% is probably not even really fair. But so take the job, Liza.
Absolutely. Take the job, be prepared, speak out, be a voice, don't show up and just sit quietly. So yes, I took advantage of all those opportunities. I laugh so often when we have these women awards for women and women panels, and I love it because we have to be able to show these stories and get the voices out. But I just pray for the day, and hopefully in my daughter's generation, where we no longer are recognizing women in this industry, that it's just a part of the norm. And I think we're making progress, but we still have a long way to go.
Well, Liza, look, I struggled with this season because I didn't want this to be a pandering thing. I've been working on this for over a year, this concept, and talking with my wife about it. And I kept going back to the same point, which was, I hate to do this and make this about women in the car business, but I really feel like I need to do this and make this about that because I want to shine a light on it, because I want to be done with it. So thank you for saying that, because I will not do this again. I promise you, I will not do a women-only season again, Liza. You have my word. It will just be the wonderful people of the car business, but I had to do it this year. I feel like we had to shine a light.
No, you know what, Sean, you're exactly right. We have to tell the stories, because one of the things when you talk about how do we get more women in this industry, they have to see women being successful in this industry. They have to hear the stories, they have to hear the struggles, and they have to hear the successes, because that's how we're going to get on their awareness for a potential career. One of the things that we did last year when we were trying to figure out how do we bring more women into our organization, and we looked at the number of people who simply applied with our company through job postings, through Indeed, through LinkedIn, and everywhere else that we post jobs. And out of every job that we posted, 24% of the applicants were women. 3% of them were women applying for jobs in our parts and service areas. So if we are just relying on women actually seeking out a career in automotive, we are never going to make progress. We have to be intentional about it. We have to actually seek them out and share with them our stories. We need to share it on social media, and we need to work through this referral and recommendations and pull women into our industry. If we wait for them to walk in on their own, I think we're going to be waiting a long time.
That's it. Pull them in, go out and scope. Look, when I was running a store, anywhere I was paying attention to who I was dealing with, whether it's a restaurant, whether it was Best Buy, because if you can sell me something, then you can sell a car. And so I always wanted people that's how I got into it. I was selling men's clothing, and my mom's best friend been in the industry for 30 years. And my mom's been a hairstylist and entrepreneur my whole life. And so he said, hey, Sean, you ever get tired of making $100 a suit? I said, yeah, it's a little bit boring. He's like, why don't you come make $1,000 a car? And I was like, what'd you just say? Like, how could I do that? And there I was 18 years old, and that was it. I was hooked. I probably got in for the wrong reasons. I got in for money. I'm not in it anymore for that. Now I'm in it because I love it and it's a passion of mine, but I was pulled into it that way. So recruiting and referral parts, that's a huge takeaway for me. I think I've circled it about 100 times on my notepad. It works. It's got to work great for you to do that, though. For any position, if you say, guys, look, we're looking for more females, then your organization's on the lookout for friends and family who might fit that role and bring them to you.
Sean, you just made a good point that I want to expand upon, if you don't mind. You talked about how you got into the car business because it was a way to make a great living. And there's certainly people who are still jumping into our business for that. People need to make a living. In fact, having financial stability and a strong financial future is absolutely critical in any career. That's what people want. But I think the biggest difference that we try to talk about, and I see other dealer groups also recognizing this, is making sure that we are communicating to this new generation that the auto industry is one of the most impactful industries in every human's life in our country. They need safe and reliable transportation to get to work, to get their kids to school, to visit loved ones, in today's world, to travel. And that when you're in the auto industry, you are impacting people's lives, that what you do really matters. I think it's a more important decision than where they decide to live or the home they decide to purchase, because not everybody purchases a home, but almost everybody has a vehicle. And helping them make the best decision that's going to fit their family, that's going to get them where they need to go in life, making sure that people who are thinking about our industry know that this is a big deal. What we do really matters and impacts families' lives more than almost any other industry they could go in.
Liza, I think in the last minute and a half, you've humanized the car business more than most people could even put their minds around it. And I think that's the part that I think a lot of people miss from the outside, is they don't humanize this experience. They look at us as plaid suit wearing, waiting out front sharks. Like, it's so, I get it. Stereotypes exist for a reason. I'm not going to sit here and go into all that. But what frustrates me is that people, it is life-changing. I used to tell people, oh, Sean, how many cars a month you sell? I sell 30 people what they wanted, what they dreamed about, what they were looking for. I don't know the first thing about cars. Without Maroni stickers, I would have never sold a new car. I am a human connection. I am not interested in horsepower and look at the safety. No. What are you as a human interested in, right? And so when you talk about the human connection part of the business, is that what drives you? I mean, it sounds like that's what drives you every day to be in our business. The last minute of what you just gave me, is that like the Liza mission statement? Is that fair?
So Sean, I didn't used to really share this, but I've shared it more recently. I am not a car person. In fact, you ask anyone in our organization, I'm not a car person. I don't know much about the products we sell. I've driven the same Volvo forever. Like, I'm just not a car person. But
so you're driving the same car? You're not, this is not like a demo from other stuff?
I swap them out once a year, but I've driven
not enough, right? I get it.
But I've driven the same model forever, and I don't really know how to use my car very well. But what I do love is I love the people I meet in this business, and I love the difference we make in their lives. I love how we can be involved in the community. I love watching our associates come here and find a career that they're excited about and proud to be a part of. That's what drives me every single day. And we're just lucky enough that we have a product in vehicles that is actually really important in people's lives. And that's what makes this industry so fun.
It is. And it's like you said, sometimes it's the first biggest purchase. We've always been trained to say it's the second. No. It's for some people, it will be the largest that they do. And that's why it's so important to me to do the right thing. I remember getting in this business I started in the Chicago market in the late 90s. It was a very aggressive place with some of the not so great things going on. And that's why I went from a dealership to another dealership, because I wasn't comfortable with what was being done to the customer, if you will, right? And so it's important I never understood making a $10,000 deal on a customer because I wanted to see him again in 2 years. And if I did that now, there was no way. As a matter of fact, I was going to look bad, and that person would probably never talk to me again if they had to get out in 2 years. So I really love the impact you talk about and how it changes people's lives, because you see it in social media, you see the posts, and that must just warm your heart when you see the social media posts about your auto group.
I do. And it makes, all the hard work so worthwhile. Sean, you mentioned about the profit piece. And recently I was talking to someone, a sales associate, who was uncomfortable with the profit being made. And when you're trying to make like $200 on a new car or something, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. But one of the things that I talk about now, because I want to get in front of it from day one when they join our company and the new hire, is that profit is not a bad word. When you have created a lot of value for a customer, when you've asked great questions, you've put them on the right vehicle, or you've recommended the right services for their car, and you've figured out which F&I products are going to be meaningful to their family. I use the example, if they have 2 teenage sons who both share this car, they're going to lose 2 sets of keys in the first 6 months. So offering key replacement is a value for them. So if we do our jobs right and we create really good value, we deserve to make a profit. And those customers are going to be the ones that come back year in and year out to keep making sure that both them and their families and friends work or help our dealerships. But profit's not a bad word. Now, if you do it the wrong way and you make that $10,000 profit on one vehicle, that's a different story. But we do want to make sure that our associates recognize that it is okay to make a profit when you tie it to creating great value for a customer.
Absolutely, 100%. And that is always what I wanted to do. I viewed selling a car as going on stage every time. And every customer was a different stage. My wife makes a joke that when I used to sell men's clothing, it was with the Men's Warehouse. It was very structured, it was very specific. And so you used to have to put shirts and ties together. And I would put on these shows. I'd be throwing ties. If a wife didn't like a tie, I'd just throw it over my shoulder. I wouldn't even look. Create this experience. And people would just line up. They weren't even my customers. They would just line up, watch it. And then they would kind of veer in. That experience, that impact on life is what drives me. It's what to see people's joy and pleasure. We will sell, as a great salesperson, you'll sell 20 or more cars a month. That person's going to buy maybe 5 cars in their life or in the majority of their life. And so we take for granted the selling of a car, but the buying of it's such a cool thing to be a part of. So I'm so glad to hear you as an owner and someone who's been doing it as long as you have, still have that just absolute passion for the customer experience. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you're right, though. Profit's not a dirty word. I just, people ask me all the time, what do you do? I don't have a red cross on my business. So, I mean, I'm in business to be in business. But no, I don't gouge anyone. No, but that isn't, Liza, you said it, $200 on a new car. Aren't people shocked when you're just friends or family, you have discussions about sort of margins, etc. I think people become shocked at the margin of a car. I think they just think that the OEM drops it on our lot, and if they buy it for $21,000, we somehow have profited the full $21,000, and it just couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, the internet's actually been helpful in dispelling that myth in some cases, but yeah, there's still a lot of misinformation out there.
Agreed on the myth part of it. The internet has helped. It has hurt in some ways, helped in others, and I think ultimately it's made us all move forward. Liza, as we wrap it up here, you've been more than gracious for your time. I really appreciate it. Let me ask you this. Going from what we're dealing with this year into the new year, this episode here, we're live the week of Christmas. What are you looking forward to and maybe have learned from this year that you can't wait to bring into the new year? Give us some positivity to head out onto the 21.
Well, I will say that probably all of us, as we're trying to put together forecasts for 2021, are still looking at that piece of paper a little bit confused. I think there's still some uncertain factors, but the best thing that I saw this year was in probably the craziest year of any of our lives. I think more difficult than 2008 or 2001. This year has shown us how resilient the auto industry is. Every time there's a challenge in our country, the auto industry rises in an incredible way. And this year, I think it was different. In 2008, it was trying to get the economy going. What I saw this year in the auto industry were several things. First, people still need cars. They need service. They need to purchase cars, even when there's something as crazy as a pandemic happening. So we're in an industry that is going to consistently have demand. We saw people being more intrigued and aware of our industry from a career standpoint than ever. We hired more college graduates this year as they were trying to figure out what employment was going to be available to them. All of a sudden, the auto industry was something that was enticing because we were one of the few industries that were not as impacted by the pandemic, at least not after the first couple of months. They saw that the dealerships in particular were finding new ways of doing business, the home and remote deliveries and pick up and drop off for service and mobile service. People saw that the auto industry found a way to still be successful, and people want careers in industries that are going to be stable and create long-term success for them. So I do think that we've made some inroads in the potential area of recruiting. And then I think from an economic standpoint, as we move into 2021, we're in a very rare time where we actually have a strong stock market and very low interest rates and expected interest rates to stay low. That's not normal when you look at the last 100 years in our country. So even though the economy seems to still be uncertain, we have a strong stock market and we have low interest rates that are going to bode very well for consumer demand in 2021. We have seen the manufacturers not slow down on production during the second wave of COVID. Now, there still could be some disruptions in early 2021, but even the manufacturers have learned how to keep their manufacturing facilities going during the second wave in a way that we didn't know in April or May. So I just threw out a lot of different reasons that we need to be optimistic, but I'm very positive about 2021. That doesn't mean that we don't need to make smart business decisions and watch our expenses and significantly train our people to create the best value we can for our consumer and continue home remote delivery, service pickup and drop off. But we've shown resiliency. We have recruited people to our industry. And I think from an economic standpoint, we're actually in a pretty good place moving in 2021.
I mean, bravo. What a perfect sum up. What a way to go about that. You talked about the people being aware of the industry and its stability. Look, I mean, March 15th to April 15th was probably the most stressful time of my life. Running a business that I've had that was just starting to sort of make its way. And we thought, oh my God, what's going to happen now? Everything's going to fall out. But because we had designed our business for this, because I had lived through 08 as a dealer and knew I couldn't survive it, we're here for it. So I'm resiliency. What a great word. What a great way to kind of cap this off. Liza, thank you so much. You have been more than I could have ever expected. Your story is tremendous, and I cannot wait for people to hear it and share it with others.
Thank you so much, Sean. Really fun. And I'm looking forward to next year and just continuing to meet great people like you and connect through our industry, because we have some awesome people in this industry.
We certainly do. And again, I appreciate you making the connection, guys. That's it. That will do it for the Car Biz Chronicles Season 3 wrapped up. It was a great year. Thank you to everyone who participated. If you haven't checked out any of the episodes, head on over to the YouTube channel. Otherwise, thank you guys so much. And I will be back in the chair on 5 Minutes with Sean, maybe 10 next week to wrap up the year. Thanks again.